Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, November 14th, 2025. This week's Chairman's Report is guest written by Jade Walle, a practicing CPA who's on the Americans for Fair Taxation Board of Directors. Would William Occam prefer the fair tax or the income tax? Occam's razor dictates that solutions or explanations to any problem or task are generally solved with the fewest number of variables or elements. Said another way, a simple, straightforward solution is likely to be better than a complex, cumbersome one. Occam's razor is attributed to William of Occam, a 14th century philosopher and theologian. The Latin phrase translates to, "Entities must not be multiplied beyond necessity." Now at this point, I'm guessing you know how we're going to utilize this centuries-old principle that has stood the test of time. I was reminded of Occam's razor when I was speaking with a family friend about the fair tax and was listening to what was important to this 25-year-old mining engineer. My friend said that he not only believed but was driven by a simple but powerful conviction that systems work best when they are clear, efficient, and accountable. My young friend's statement immediately struck me to the core, and I knew his heart was forever promised to the fair tax movement. So the question is, which system of taxation would better satisfy the wisdom of Occam's razor's simple requirement as well as my friend's powerful conviction, the income tax or the fair tax? Now, at the risk of stating the obvious, H.R. 25, the Fair Tax Bill, is approximately 130 pages long. It replaces a system that has spawned over 80,000 pages of tax law, regulations, and case law. Now, the fair tax was designed by a small team of economists working together to devise the best tax system possible. The Internal Revenue Code, on the other hand, is a hopelessly complicated patchwork of competing and conflicting provisions cobbled together by wrangling between the two political parties. It's been going on since 1913. The fair tax is a simple, fair, efficient, and transparent retail consumption tax. It replaces the personal income tax, the corporate income tax, capital gains taxes, gift taxes, estate taxes, and the horribly regressive federal payroll taxes. The income tax requires that American taxpayers spend countless hours filling out complicated forms every year telling the government all the intimate details of their personal finances. The fair tax requires no paperwork at all from individuals. The income tax is so complicated that when 50 professional tax preparers were given the exact same data for a typical American family, they came up with 49 different answers on what that family owed in taxes. The fair tax is so simple the fifth grader can understand it. The income tax requires thousands of pages of instructions on how to fill out all the various IRS tax forms. The fair tax has no forms at all and requires no instructions at all. The income tax is riddled with a myriad of deductions, credits, adjustments, exemptions, and loopholes so that two families with similar incomes can owe vastly different amounts of tax. The fair tax treats everyone the same. No one pays the fair tax on their basic necessities. Then beyond that, the more you spend on new goods and services, the more tax you pay. With the income tax, large corporations employ floors of accountants and tax attorneys to stay on top of the ever-changing tax laws and ensure that the company gets every tax benefit it's entitled to and that their tax forms are filled out correctly. With a fair tax, those people can go back to doing what they really want and need to do, which is making a better mousetrap so they can drive their business forward. My young friend articulated to me how he strives to bring an analytical approach to solving complex problems, and I understand his mindset. The great thing with a fair tax is that it's a straightforward, simple, non-complex way to raise the revenue the government needs to operate. When compared with the income tax, the fair tax delivers a resoundingly simple solution to our ongoing complex problem of an impossible tax code with an annual illegal tax evasion rate of $1 trillion. My young friend's analytical conclusion is that the fair tax is simply a better mechanism to collect our nation's treasury receipts. William of Occam would be proud. In conclusion, Jade's article addressed the fact that if you want a simple and fair method of collecting federal taxes, there's only one choice, the fair tax. You ask why we don't scrap the income payroll tax system and replace it with a fair tax that allows us to keep our whole paycheck and we decide how much tax we pay by what we purchase? Well, William of Occam says look for the simple answer. And the simple answer here is the elites and members of Congress benefit from the present income payroll tax system. Now, many of you have labored tirelessly for freedom from the federal income tax and the IRS. You deserve a great deal of credit for your efforts to educate the American people on the need to fund the American government in a way that's good for America and that returns freedom to the American people. It's imperative, though, that we don't replace the current income tax and the IRS with an alternative system that can still be manipulated by the ruling elite. We must let Congress and the President know that the best way to replace the income tax and the IRS is with the fair tax. Now, make no mistake about it. The fair tax is a grave threat to the ruling elites. It will strip them of their power and their ability to control us through the tax system. Their opposition to the fair tax will be fierce and unrelenting, and don't think for an instant they won't use half-truths, deception, and downright lies in their desperate attempt to hang on to their power. However, with the support of this president, we can finally eliminate the income tax and the IRS. Now, of course, the best course of action is not only to repeal the income tax and abolish the IRS, but to repeal the 16th Amendment as well so that no future administration can ever shackle the American people with an income tax again. We must come together and ensure that real tax reform, the fair tax, is not subverted by the elites in D.C. This will take the diligent efforts from all of us. We need your financial assistance, and we need your grassroots assistance. Now, if you have contacts that will allow us to get more information about the fair tax to President Trump, please let us know. Also, please email us at info@fairtax.org, and we'll give you some options on how you can best help us. At a minimum, please call your congressional representative and ask if he or she supports the fair tax. If so, thank him or her for their support and suggest they become a co-sponsor of H.R. 25 if they're not one already. If not, ask why not. Now, if your representative claims to be unfamiliar with the fair tax, offer to have someone come to their office and explain it to them. The solution: pass the fair tax. Now, why would D.C. pass the fair tax and give up an almost unlimited source of donations? Well, they won't, at least not voluntarily. The only way they will is if the rest of us demand it. Isn't it time to end this ludicrous tax collection system in the IRS along with it? Help bring about real tax reform and stop future IRS abuses. By contributing, or actually investing, $10.40 a month, you help provide a financial base to Americans for fair taxation. Now, if you can make larger contributions/investments, these will be used not for salaries, as we're all volunteers, but for the needed updates to our economic studies, which will be vital for all future years. Please go to FAIRtax.org to invest in AFFT and help us pass the fair tax. It's an investment in your and your family's future.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at FAIRtax.org.